The usual morning rumble reigned in the city hospital. Booming steps along the corridors, ringing voices, short snatches of conversations that echoed from ward to ward. In the emergency room, patients filled out forms, and doctors and nurses, holding stacks of paperwork in their hands, hurried to operating rooms or patient rooms. For Michael Harper, whom everyone here called Mike, such turmoil had long been a natural background. He was a surgeon with great experience. At 42, he rarely lost his temper, managed junior staff skillfully, and remained calm even in the most tense situations. Since the morning, Mike had been preparing for the upcoming complex abdominal surgery. The patient required urgent intervention. The extensive tumor threatened to block important body functions. Mike was well aware of the seriousness of this task, and, a few minutes before the anesthesia, took a careful look at the entire team in the operating room. The nurses, anesthesiologists, and assistants were ready. Mike's subtle composure in the face of risk always distinguished him among his colleagues. His firmness inspired confidence in everyone who worked nearby. Mike glanced at the screen displaying the patient's vital signs. Heart rate is within normal limits. Blood pressure is under control. Oxygen level is sufficient. He nodded to the assistant and carefully began to work. Every movement was verified over years of practice. Over the years, the realization has come that the main thing in a surgeon's work is accuracy and the ability to calculate risks. After a few tense minutes, he reached the tumor. It seemed to wrap itself around the tissues, like an invader entrenched in the body. But Mike was prepared for such situations. He began to remove the formation with concentration, giving short instructions to the assistant and monitoring even the smallest changes in the patient's condition. The heartbeat increased several beats. The anesthesiologist gave Mike a worried look. Mike was not distracted from his filigree work, but still asked quietly, "What's wrong with our blood pressure?" "The pressure has dropped a little. I correct it with medications." There was a tense silence in the operating room. Everyone was attentive to every detail, every gesture of the surgeon. There was no room for error. About an hour later, when the tumor was finally completely removed, Mike exhaled. He said quietly, "We made it. Now you need to carefully check the vessels and sew them up." The team worked smoothly, strictly following Mike's instructions. After some time, the operation was completed. The patient was transferred to intensive care to monitor his recovery on the first critical day. Mike knew that the patient had a long road of rehabilitation ahead, but the main thing was that the threat had been eliminated. Tired, but pleased with the result, Mike leaned back in his chair in the small staff room. Everything here was quite modest. A table, a computer, a stand with medical records. He drank a glass of water in silence and closed his eyes for just a second, replaying the recent operation in his head. But before he could relax properly, there was a knock on the door. "Dr. Harper, Tom is here," the nurse said, looking inside. Tom Keller, the head of the department, appeared in the corridor in his usual image. A tall, strong man in his early 50s, with a gloomy face, but a fair look. Tom always expressed his thoughts directly, without embellishment, which sometimes shocked his more sensitive colleagues. But Mike knew that behind Tom's outward rudeness, there was a responsible soul who sincerely cared for every specialist in the department. "Great Harper," Tom said, entering the staff room. "How did the operation go?" "Everything is according to plan. The tumor was removed. The patient is in intensive care." "Well done. Everything is clear as usual. But I have a different conversation for you." Tom sat down on a chair next to him and took a short pause. "I need a reliable person for additional duty. Honestly, I could entrust this to someone young, but there is a serious responsibility there. It will be necessary to take emergency cases. I want you to think." Mike knew it would be a bad idea to give up additional responsibilities, and probably stupid, given that their department had recently received new equipment and Tom was actively promoting the idea of improving the quality of treatment. But on the other hand, Mike also needed personal time, because lately Sarah, his wife, was increasingly reproaching him for disappearing in the hospital and being at home only formally. "I'll think about it, Tom," Mike answered calmly. "I want to understand whether I can combine it with the current schedule." Unfortunately, you don't have much time to think, Tom responded, running his hand over his balding head. We need to close this hole in the schedule next week, but I don't insist by force. Just tell me if you can. Mike nodded. Tom stood up, slapping him on the shoulder. Okay, I won't bother you. Rest. When Tom left, Mike stayed in the staff room for a few more minutes, thinking about the situation. Working at the hospital is important, of course, but family life is also falling apart at the seams. The wife is on the verge of dissatisfaction. Daughter Olivia complains that her father rarely comes to her school events. All this weighed heavily on Mike's soul. But Sarah has been talking about some kind of vacation in Florida for a week now. She was tired of the gray winter and the monotony of everyday life. He realized that it was time to give in. Perhaps if Sarah and her daughter go away to rest, the tension in the house will at least decrease a little. As he was leaving the hospital, the nurse on duty stopped him and asked him to sign the documents for the operation. Mike quickly signed his name, then walked to the parking lot, got into his car, and closed his eyes for a few seconds. Thoughts about Tom's duty, Sarah's dissatisfaction, fatigue, and the future necessary trip on vacation swarmed in his head. He took a deep breath and drove out of the hospital yard. The noisy metropolis greeted him with horns, traffic lights, and streams of cars stretching along the avenues. When he reached the house, faint reflections of the evening lights were already breaking through the windows of the apartment. Sarah was waiting for him in the living room. She was tense posture, compressed lips. Mike stared at his wife. She was dressed in an expensive home suit, but all her mannerisms betrayed irritation. There was a program playing quietly on TV, but Sarah clearly wasn't watching it. She was rather waiting for her husband to be free to start a conversation. "Why haven't you called all day?" she asked grumpily, without even greeting Mike. "I was in surgery. 3 o'clock. Then, in the staff room, I signed a bunch of documents," Mike answered with the same restraint, trying not to stir up a conflict right from the start. "It's always the same thing," Sarah exhaled noisily and turned towards the window. "I'm already going crazy with boredom here." "How much is possible?" Mike wearily took off his jacket, put the briefcase with documents on the chair, and slowly walked up to Sarah. "I understand that this is difficult for you. But Sarah, this is my job. Well, I can't give up everything." She looked at him with a bitter smile. "But you can, for example, give me time. I've been telling you all week that I need a rest. I want to go to Florida. Yes, at least for a couple of weeks. Sea, sun, no winter or grayness. I deserve a normal rest." Mike closed his eyes, trying to remain calm. "Okay, let's talk about this calmly. I agree that you need rest. And Olivia, by the way, could also use a change of scenery. School exhausts her, and the atmosphere at home is tense." Sarah snorted. "The atmosphere is tense due to your constant absence. We won't find out who is to blame. Let's just discuss how to organize this trip. I may have additional duties in the near future. Tom asked me to cover for some of my colleagues. I doubt I can go on holiday myself. But you and Olivia can fly without me. Do you mind?" Sarah raised her eyebrows. "Without you. Well, at least that's it. But I will rest and not wait for you all day long." "Exactly. I will pay for tickets, accommodation, and everything else. I hope this will at least be a way out of the situation." Sarah lowered her eyes, nervously ran her fingers along the armrest of the sofa, and, with a sharpness in her voice, suggested, "You're saying this because it's more convenient for you. There is no need to pretend that you are a caring husband. You just don't want to change your plans. But you know what? Okay, I don't care. I'll fly without you. Just buy your tickets tomorrow." Mike sighed heavily. In the back of his mind, he hoped that Sarah and Olivia's vacation would actually ease the tension. Perhaps this will help the family find some positive emotions, even if he is not around. But he felt like an impenetrable wall had already grown between them. Her daughter, 12-year-old Olivia, looked out from the bedroom, a thin girl with inquisitive eyes and an open, sincere face. "Dad, you've already come." There was a childish concern in her voice. "I prepared a presentation for school. I wanted to show you." "Of course, honey. Come on later. Just give me 5 minutes to talk to my mom. Olivia nodded and disappeared out the door. Mike felt a pang of guilt. He promised his daughter that he would help with the materials, but today he was too exhausted. Sarah, seeing this, waved her hand. In general, I said everything. I need rest. Make sure Olivia and I fly to Florida one of these days. Let's rent a good hotel, and I want you to give me enough money for shopping. I want to update my wardrobe. This was already something common. Sarah had not worked as a nurse for a long time. She left her job about 2 years ago, explaining that she was tired of duty and routine. Now she spends all day at home or goes shopping with her friends. Mike reproached her for this to himself, but out loud he tried not to enter into conflicts. After several unsuccessful attempts to get Sarah back to work, he simply resigned himself. Their family life gradually came down to Mike earning and Sarah spending. Okay, Sarah, everything will be the way you want. Tomorrow I will issue tickets and choose a hotel. Are you satisfied? More or less, she got up and walked towards the kitchen. Mike was left standing in the middle of the living room, feeling heavy in his soul. He knew that their relationship had long ceased to be warm, but he was ready to endure for the sake of his daughter. The most important thing is that Olivia should not suffer from parental conflicts. Mike convinced himself every day that sooner or later everything would get better, but each time this conviction melted more and more. Before going to his room, he went to his daughter's bedroom. He opened the door slightly and saw Olivia sitting at the table, looking at a laptop connected by a wire to a tablet. She raised her head when she felt his presence. "Dad, come in. I just made a couple of slides about the nature of the Amazon. This is our project on geography." Mike smiled and walked in, feeling his soul calm in his daughter's presence. Olivia was a ray of light in the midst of his turmoil. He sat down next to him and looked at the slides, which contained photographs of tropical forests, rivers, and animals. It turned out great. "Well done," he said, patting his daughter on the shoulder. "I'm very proud of you. Sorry I can't help more. I don't have enough time. Tomorrow, maybe in the morning, I'll find an hour before work." Olivia nodded and asked quietly, "Dad, will you fly to Florida with us?" Mike looked at her sadly. "No, Bunny, unfortunately, I can't leave the hospital now. I have too many surgeries and the boss is asking me to take on extra shifts. But I hope you have a good time there, and be sure to send me photos from the beach." "I would like you to rest too," Olivia sighed. "Okay, then I'll send you photos and videos." Mike ruffled her hair. "Thank you, Liv. Good night." When he left her room, he felt even more tired. But the decision about Florida had already been made. "We need to buy tickets as soon as possible, book a hotel, and give Sarah what she asked for." Thus ended another day in the Harper family. Mike no longer expected tenderness and understanding from Sarah, but continued to hope that sooner or later everything would settle down. Now he could never imagine that the trip he was organizing with such difficulty would turn out to be a real blow of fate for him. But for now, he simply fulfilled his promise to provide his wife and daughter with a well-deserved rest. The next morning, Mike arrived at the hospital at 7 o'clock as usual. A discordant stream of patients from the night shift had already gathered in the emergency room, and some of them required examination by a surgeon. Mike ran his eyes through the lists, added a few signatures where needed, and was already preparing to make his rounds when he saw a new employee in the resident's office, a pediatrician named Abby Wilson. She had been here for a couple of weeks now, but their schedules rarely matched. Mike knew little about her. She was 35 years old, raising a 10-year-old son alone. According to rumors, Abby moved to this city because the former clinic was experiencing financial difficulties and she urgently needed a job. She worked as a pediatrician, knew how to find a common language with children, and also sometimes helped in related areas if consultation was needed on young patients. For Mike, pediatric patients were rare because he was an adult surgeon, but sometimes there were exceptions. This time, Abby stood at the schedule board, trying to figure out the schedule for the current week. A slight mixed expression from surprise to slight irritation ran across her face when she saw that almost every day was scheduled to the limit. "Good morning," Mike greeted, coming closer. There's something wrong with the schedule. She turned and smiled, although there was weariness in her eyes. Kind. No, everything is fine. I just need to adjust the time of consultations because my son is going to have an examination at the end of the week, and I must be present. Understand. By the way, I'm Mike Harper, a surgeon. Yes, of course, I heard about you, Mike. You seem to be one of the most respected doctors here. I'm Abby Wilson. I work in the pediatric ward. More precisely, in what is called pediatrics here, although it is rather a small children's department. Nice to meet you. She extended her hand, and Mike shook it briefly, but friendly. Mutually. If you have any questions or need help, please contact us. I have a daughter about your son's age. She's 12, so parental concerns are close to me. Although, I must admit, my wife and I are raising her with some distance, as if the daughter is on her own, we are on our own. Mike himself was surprised at how easily he admitted to the imperfection of family relationships. He was usually quite secretive, but there was something about Abby that made him want to talk. It's not easy for me either. My son is 10, his name is Dylan, and he is quite a lively boy. He loves sports, adventures, and is always looking for something to do. I'm raising him alone. Sometimes it's very difficult. But I'm not complaining, everything is fine with us, we just don't always have free time. Mike noticed Abby tugging at the hem of her white robe slightly nervously. She was apparently exhausted by the workload, or maybe she had her own difficulties in life. By the way, Abby, if you need to take your son for a checkup, I think Tom Keller, our director, will accommodate him. Although he seems harsh, he always tries to support good specialists. You can contact him directly or tell me, and I'll put in a good word. Abby nodded gratefully. Thank you, I'll take that into account. I still don't know how things will work out over time, but I'll keep it in mind. Suddenly, the door to the staff room burst open, and one of the nurses burst into the room, saying loudly, Dr. Harper, urgently to the operating room. We received a patient with a gunshot and needed emergency intervention. Mike glanced at Abby, nodded briefly goodbye, and hurried after the nurse into the hallway. Abby also went to her room, but on the way she couldn't resist looking after him. She heard about Mike's professionalism and saw how other colleagues treated him with great respect. She wanted to get to know him better, if only to understand what kind of person was hidden behind this seemingly unshakable mask. The operation itself did not last too long, because the bullet went right through, but it was necessary to stitch up and restore the damaged tissue. Mike worked quickly and accurately, and the nurses and assistants helped him harmoniously. An hour later, the patient was stabilized. In the hallway, Mike, taking a breath, saw Abby standing next to Tom and talking about some documents. Great job, Harper, Tom grumbled when he noticed him. As usual, everything is on top. Mike made a sign with his hand, saying, nothing special, just doing my job, and asked Abby, everything is fine? What has Tom loaded you with? She shrugged. No, everything is fine. We are discussing my shifts and consultations. By the way, Mike took a sip from the bottle of water that the nurse handed him. I wanted to talk to you. I have an idea. My wife is going to Florida with her daughter, and sometimes it gets boring there. I thought maybe you would also like to fly there with your son for a couple of days. Maybe it would be possible to combine the children's rest and unwind for you too. But this is just an idea. I need to find out what my wife says. He glanced at Tom, who frowned but remained silent. Abby was silent for a while, apparently wondering if it was too bold of him to invite his colleague to go with his wife and daughter. Thank you, Mike. This is unexpected. But I don't even know how many days I can find yet. Dylan dreams of the sea. He has long asked me to take a vacation to fly somewhere. But I didn't think before that I could afford it, but now. In general, I have small savings, but I'm not yet sure whether they will be enough for a full-fledged vacation. You don't have to worry. My wife always chooses good, but more or less reasonable hotels. In addition, I am ready to help with organizational issues. The main thing for me is that they don't get bored there, and I think children will be more interested in company. Abby smiled, feeling a slight warmth from someone giving her a helping hand. In her life, she rarely met men who were ready to sincerely show care without a second thought. She nodded. Okay, Mike, give me a day to think and see if this is possible in terms of money and time. If everything works out, I'll be happy to join. Great. Then I'll talk to my wife in the evening and you decide. If anything, we can discuss it tomorrow. Mike, feeling satisfied with the emerging plan, went to his room to change clothes. He didn't know what prompted him to suggest this to Abby. Maybe it was intuition, or maybe he really wanted Sarah not to be left alone with her eternal whims. The presence of another woman nearby, and even with a child, could be a counterbalance to Sarah's boredom and unpredictable mood. The whole day flashed by in chores, inspections, and paperwork. Abby kept running into Mike in the hallway, and they briefly exchanged a few words about the patients. There was still weariness in Abby's eyes, but sometimes, when their gazes met, Mike saw a glimmer of curiosity in her. She seemed to be trying to understand what kind of person was standing in front of her. In the evening, when Mike was about to leave home, he once again ran into Abby at the elevator. She said hello and asked how the rest of the day went. It's normal, everything is normal. How are you? My workday was crazy, she sighed. 3 babies with a viral infection. One has serious complications. I spent almost all the time in his room. How is he? It seems to have stabilized. Let's look at the dynamics tomorrow. They stood silently in front of the closed elevator doors for a couple of seconds. Then Abby said quietly, by the way, I figured out my finances. Maybe I can really take Dylan and fly away for 5 days. Of course, I'm not sure that you can be around all the time, but it will still be great if there is company. Plus, my son is very outgoing and loves to hang out with other kids. Great, I'll just talk to Sarah. It is possible that she will not be delighted with the idea of sharing a vacation with someone, but I think she will agree because one way or another I persuaded her to make a friend with me. But none of her friends responded. I hope the presence of a good man, and even with a child, will be to her advantage. When the elevator doors opened, they said goodbye, wishing each other a good evening. Mike got into the car, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and fatigue. He imagined telling Sarah that he wanted to invite his new colleague and his son to their family vacation. Sarah will most likely be unhappy or suspect something is wrong. But for Mike it seemed logical. Since he couldn't fly, let Sarah have company, and Olivia wouldn't be left to her own devices for the entire vacation. But he had no idea that this seemingly innocent idea would become a game changer. Everything was just beginning. Sarah didn't like this idea from the very beginning. Mike, returning home after a day of work, found his wife in a relaxed position on the sofa. She was scrolling through the news feed on her phone and drinking expensive green tea, which she brewed in an elegant glass teapot. Sarah, can I see you for a couple of minutes? Mike asked, taking off his shoes in the hallway. If this is about money again or your work schedule, then I don't want to listen to it, she responded, without taking her eyes off her smartphone. No, this is something else. I wanted to suggest that a colleague of mine from the hospital come with you on your trip to Florida. She is a pediatrician, a very nice woman, and has a 10-year-old son, Dylan. I thought you and Olivia would have more fun, and the boy is about our daughter's age. Maybe we can make friends with the children. Sarah raised her eyes, glaring at him with displeasure. What kind of strange proposal is this? Why should I relax with a strange woman and her child? Well, first of all, you yourself were bored while traveling, you complained. Secondly, I can't go, but the company with the child will help entertain Olivia. Thirdly, I know that it's not easy for you to solve everyday issues alone, rent a car, or figure things out on the spot. Abby, my colleague, is quite independent. You will be more comfortable together. Sarah grinned coldly. I don't need any girlfriend. I solve my own problems, and I don't want anyone looking over my shoulder. If it were my close friend, it would be understandable. And so, a complete stranger. Mike expected this reaction. He tried to settle the matter calmly. Sarah, it's just a suggestion. You yourself said that you are not eager to run around with Olivia on excursions and water parks. and Abby has a boy, so they can spend time with Olivia. As a result, you won't have to strain yourself. I could mind my own business while the children are together. Sarah seemed to think about this argument. Finally, she said, "Okay, so be it. But I set conditions. I choose the hotel I want, and if there are any problems there, don't think that I will babysit someone else's child. And I'm definitely not going to share the room. I need my personal comfort. Let your colleague look for a separate apartment for herself. And there is no limit on my spending, okay? Certainly. Everyone pays for themselves. The main thing is that everyone is happy." Sarah just chuckled, but apparently the idea of Abby's presence no longer seemed so catastrophic to her. Mike breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe everything will work out. Olivia, having learned that there would be an opportunity to meet a boy her age, reacted rather positively to the news. She was interested in communicating with her peers, but on vacation alone she was really bored. Sarah didn't particularly care about children's hobbies, preferring to go shopping or sit at the pool bar, so the idea of a boy playing with Olivia was quite appealing. After talking with his wife, Mike went into his office and dialed Abby's number. She did not pick up the phone right away. There was noise in her voice. Apparently, she was somewhere in a public place. "Hello, Mike, I'm listening." "Hello, Abby. I just discussed your possible participation in the trip with my wife. In general, she agrees, but asked to clarify that you will live separately because she needs personal comfort. Understand, I didn't expect to live together. I have some savings, hopefully enough for a decent hotel. Although perhaps we will take a more budget apartment, but next to yours. It doesn't matter to me. The main thing is that there is a beach." Mike smiled as if she could see him through the phone. "Okay, Sarah chose one complex on the coast. I'll send you a link so you can see the prices and numbers. If it fits, we will arrange it. If anything, we will help. I will book tickets and a hotel today." "Sounds great. By the way, my Dylan was already happily jumping around the house when he found out that we were going to the sea. He's never really been on a proper beach holiday, so this is a gift for him." "Glad to hear. Then see you at the hospital. We'll discuss all the details there. Good night." "Calm down, Mike." The conversation ended. Mike felt vaguely relieved, but also a little worried, because Sarah could change her mood at any moment. However, the next day she only nodded when he said that he was booking tickets and asked to transfer money to her card in advance. Mike agreed without further ado. Soon everything was finally formed. Sarah, Olivia, Abby, and Dylan fly to Florida. The location was chosen with a convenient beach, swimming pools, and several entertainment options nearby. Children will be able to relax, swim, go to the water park, and Sarah will be able to indulge in her favorite activities. Abby, of course, was not going to sit next to her around the clock, but she was ready to share her time and look after Olivia so that Sarah would not have unnecessary worries. Mike, despite his calm outward demeanor, felt that deep down he was hoping for a little test for Sarah. Will she finally be able to relax, stop being dissatisfied, and begin to see her husband as a person and not a walking ATM? He hoped that when Sarah returned, something would move between them, but he did not yet have a clear understanding of how to achieve this. He himself became immersed in hospital everyday life. Tom still insisted that Mike take on a couple of extra night shifts, and he reluctantly agreed. All that remained was to wait for the day of departure. The morning of departure arrived. The suitcases were already neatly packed near the front door. In the evening, Sarah managed to quarrel with Mike over some trifle. She didn't like the shoes he bought for Olivia, saying they were too ordinary for a vacation in Florida. Mike didn't argue and offered to buy anything on the spot. Fortunately, there are plenty of stores in Florida, but tension hung in the air. Olivia wasn't excited about the trip per se, but rather about the opportunity to meet Dylan. She had already read about the local water park and was going to persuade her mother to go there. Sarah, on the contrary, thought about her freedom. She was used to the fact that her husband was always there, and now she was looking forward to a break from his ever-tired gaze and silent restraint. When they loaded the things into the car, Mike got behind the wheel, Sarah took the front seat, and Olivia sat in the back, looking out the window at the streets covered in the light haze of the morning sun. On the way to the airport, no one spoke much. Sarah was scrolling through her social media feed. Olivia was listening to music on her headphones. Mike was concentrating on driving the car and wondered from time to time if he had forgotten something important. He checked the documents, tickets, everything was in order. Just yesterday, he received a text message from Abby that she would drive to the airport with her son herself, so there was no need to bother Mike. So we agreed. The usual pre-flight chaos reigned at the airport. Families with children, business people in suits, travelers with huge backpacks. They all scurried in different directions, hurrying to check in and check their luggage. Mike found the right counter and helped Sarah and Olivia check their bags. When they finished, Abby appeared on the horizon with Dylan. A 10-year-old boy looked around with cheerful eyes, tugging at his mother's sleeve. "Ma, look how big the plane is on the runway." Abby smiled, trying to reassure her son. "Dylan, we'll soon board the plane too. You'll see everything closer." Mike waved his hand at them and called them to the counter. Sarah had the tact to smile slightly at Abby and say hello, although not with much enthusiasm. Then she pretended to be completely occupied with the phone. Olivia looked at Dylan curiously, but didn't dare speak first. Then Mike winked at his daughter. "Liv, meet Dylan, Abby's son. You are almost the same age. You can make friends. Tell him about the water park you really wanted to visit." Olivia blushed, but offered hesitantly. "Hello. Do you like water slides? I saw that the hotel has a huge water park. They say there are very cool slides there." Dylan immediately perked up. "Yes, I love it. Mom promised that she would let me go. Maybe we can go together." Olivia nodded, smiling. A dialogue began, and the children instantly found common topics for conversation. While the adults were completing formalities with tickets, Dylan was already telling Olivia about how he rode the slides in a water park, not far from their old city, and Olivia shared her plans to spend the holidays as actively as possible. It was time to say goodbye. The flight was approaching. Mike took turns hugging his daughter, who pressed herself against his chest for a moment, sighing. "Dad, I will send you photos. Try not to get overtired at work. Necessarily. Enjoy your holiday, Liv. You deserve it." Sarah allowed Mike to kiss her on the cheek, but she looked uninterested. She was looking forward to her vacation. Her thoughts were already hovering somewhere above the sea waves. There was a mixture of impatience and hidden annoyance on her face, as if Mike was to blame for all the inconveniences in her life. "All the best, Sarah. Be careful. Watch your daughter, okay?" She nodded without looking him in the eyes. Mike then turned to Abby. "Thank you for agreeing to this trip. I hope you both benefit from your vacation. If something happens, call at any time." Abby responded with a soft smile. "Everything will be fine. Don't worry, I'll look after the guys." Among the announcements over the loudspeaker, there was an invitation to board. Sarah and Abby headed to the gate with their children. Mike watched them go, feeling a sudden emptiness. For how many years he had not felt inner peace, without hassle, disputes, endless fuss. And now he has several weeks of silence ahead of him. Maybe this is for the best. Although Mike also felt a slight excitement. What if they're on vacation, Sarah again finds a reason to complain? And what if, on the contrary, she sees the other side of life and understands what true family happiness is? But for now, all this remains speculation. He got into the car and drove back to the hospital, knowing that in a few hours he would have another operation. A quiet house awaited him, and Mike hoped to enjoy rare moments of rest. Soon, Mike's days blurred into an indistinguishable stream of shifts, operations, and short sleep breaks. At first, the silence of the house seemed heavenly to him. No nagging from Sarah, no reproaches, no fuss. He could turn on the TV in the evening or read an article in a medical journal, rather than listen to his wife mutter that she was bored and that he was an insensitive person. But after a couple of days, it became unusual for him. He realized that even negative communication is still some kind of part of his usual life. There were no phone calls from Sarah. Only occasionally did Olivia send short messages. They were laconic. Dad, today we went to the water park. It was a lot of fun. You would definitely like it. Let's relax. Everything is fine. Mike was glad that his daughter was doing well, but he himself was waiting for more detailed stories. However, Olivia was a teenager. For her, a couple of lines in the messenger was already a feat, and Sarah, as usual, did not consider it necessary to report. But there was plenty of work to do. Over the course of a week, Mike performed several complex operations, one case of peritonitis, a couple of tumor removals in different areas. There were also traumatic patient's burns, stab wounds. The operating room was a familiar environment. Mike felt in his element. There he forgot about the problems of his personal life, completely immersing himself in saving people. One evening, when he was just checking the diaries of patients after a major operation, Olivia called him via video link. Mike immediately threw away the papers and, smiling, accepted the challenge. "Hello, Dad. How are you?" Olivia appeared on the screen in a swimsuit with blue pool water and tall palm trees visible in the background. Mike saw that his daughter seemed to blossom. Her face was pink from the sun. Her eyes were shining. "I'm fine. I'm working as usual. How are you doing?" "Yes, okay. We go to the beach here every day. I'm already tanned. Dylan is cool. We became friends. He's funny and we have similar interests. We went on water slides together. Abby is also very sweet. Sometimes we play board games together." Mike felt warmth in his soul when he heard the positivity in his daughter's voice. "How's Mom?" At this, Olivia's face took on a more serious expression. Mom disappears somewhere almost all the time. First she says that she went to the store, then she sits at the bar by the pool. Sometimes she comes back late, Abby and I are already having dinner, and she's still out and about. Mike frowned. "Are you sure everything is okay?" "Yes, it seems like that. Mom's just hanging out, meeting people. I'm not interested, to be honest. But Abby sometimes gets worried when her mom doesn't show up on time. He says that a woman shouldn't disappear like that in a strange place. But Mom doesn't seem to pay attention to this." Mike's heart sank with worry, but he didn't want to show Olivia how worried he was. "Understood. Okay, the main thing is that you are not alone and that you have company. I'm glad you're having fun. Don't worry, Mom is a grown woman. She is responsible for herself. But if anything goes wrong, notify me or Abby immediately." "Okay, Dad. By the way, Dylan says hi to you too. He's nearby. Don't you want to talk to him?" "Of course. Go ahead." Olivia turned the camera, and Mike saw a smiling boy with disheveled hair. "Hello, Mr. Harper. Thank you for helping organize this vacation. It's great here." "Glad you like it, Dylan. Rest well. Take care of yourself and Olivia." Dylan nodded, and then Abby came up to them. Her calm face entered the frame, a little worried, but she smiled at Mike. "Hello. How are you doing at work?" "It's okay. I can handle it. How are you?" "We try not to get bored. This is a great beach, great for kids." Sarah, too, apparently found herself having fun. There was a strange intonation in her voice, as if she wanted to add something, but restrained herself. Mike felt a chill inside, but decided not to ask questions in front of the children. "I understand. If anything, write or call at any time." "Absolutely, Mike. Take care of yourself." The call has ended. Mike leaned back in his chair, feeling anxiety rise in his soul. Sarah could not be called a decent and faithful wife, but he tried not to think about the worst, only sometimes remembering with bitterness how easily she met men before, even if she did not cheat. But now, still, vacation, new people, temptations. Mike couldn't shake her every step. He was having an adult conversation with himself. "She makes her own decisions. I can't control her." But this did not relieve the tension. After another couple of days, the tension intensified. In the evening, when Mike was already at home after duty, the phone rang. Abby's name flashed on the screen. He responded immediately. "Hello, did something happen?" Abby's quiet voice was heard on the phone. "Sorry to bother you. I don't know how to tell you, but Sarah's behavior is starting to worry me. Today, the children and I were on the beach, and she left in the morning, saying that she needed to go to the shopping center. She returned only in the evening, apparently tipsy. There was a man with her, and, they looked pretty familiar. Then this man left, and Sarah stayed with me and the children, pretending that everything was normal. Mike clenched his fists, his heart beating faster. My throat is dry. Are you sure he didn't just help her carry her bags or something? There weren't really any bags. Look, maybe I'm panicking for nothing, but they act like they know each other too well. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I can only say that it bothers me. I decided to call you because Olivia is seeing things like this. Mike fell silent, feeling a buzz and emptiness inside. Jealousy and resentment set in. Even if Sarah is just flirting, it's already disrespectful. But he couldn't accuse her without facts. Thank you for telling me. Try to protect Olivia from all of this if you can. And tell Sarah that I was wondering if she liked the hotel. Maybe she will understand that I am aware and calm down. Fine. Sorry to interfere. No, everything is fine. I appreciate your candor. He hung up, feeling a heavy knot being tightened in his soul. The last years of the marriage passed in the cold, but he still hoped that Sarah would not stoop to outright betrayal. Now suspicions, like black crows, circled in his head. He had little doubt that Sarah was having fun with some man. After all, she always wanted to feel worshipped and admired. And now, apparently, she has found a way to satisfy this need. Mike spent the night in agonizing thoughts. He knew he was too tired to make hasty decisions. Or maybe Sarah is just fooling around, flirting, but not crossing the line. He tried to convince himself of this, but the feeling of anxiety did not go away. From a self-respect point of view, he understood that such a situation was humiliating. But what to do? Calling Sarah and making a scandal over the phone is stupid and pointless. Sending a message asking, "Are you cheating on me?" is even more absurd. It was necessary to wait for more compelling confirmations or refutations. That's what he thought then. On the sunny coast of Florida, the days passed lazily and relaxingly. The scorching sun, the measured sound of the waves, the cries of seagulls, colorful towels on the beach, all this created an atmosphere of carefree and fun. Dylan and Olivia spent their days splashing in the warm water, chasing seabirds, and building sand castles. Sometimes we went to the water park, where we squealed with delight as we rode down the dizzying slides. Abby watched them with a smile, trying to get some rest and calm her exhausted soul. Years of raising her son on her own, constant worries about money, problems at work, all this exhausted her. She really hoped that a few days at sea would give her vitality, but she was worried about Sarah's behavior. She almost did not participate in joint activities with the children, constantly finding excuses to go, to see new stores, or to take a walk to nightclubs. Abby didn't want to judge because everyone is free to rest as they want. But Sarah clearly overdid it. She returned in the evening or even late at night, and sometimes disappeared completely, appearing only at dawn. One afternoon, when Abby and the kids were by the pool and Sarah had wandered off again, Olivia asked, "Abby, where is Mom?" Abby thought for a moment before answering. "I don't know, Liv. I think she was talking about some kind of hotel club." "I see," the girl pouted, then, after hesitating, added, "Don't think I'm complaining, but my mother hasn't been spending any time with me lately. I almost don't care anymore, I'm used to it, but it's strange that she doesn't even invite me to go shopping." Abby felt sympathy for the child. Maybe Mom just needs to be alone. After all, you don't get bored. We are here with you. We can go to the beach or play board games at any time. Yes, I don't miss it. It's great with you and Dylan. Thank you for coming. They smiled at each other. Abby knew Olivia was secretly suffering from her mother's estrangement, but she didn't want to show it. The girl tried to seem independent, but at such moments sadness slipped into her voice. The next day, Abby decided to keep an eye on how Sarah was spending her time. Not out of curiosity, but rather for Olivia's safety. After all, Sarah was the legal guardian, and if something happened to her, it would affect the child. In the morning, after breakfast, Sarah left the hotel in a short dress, doused in perfume, and Abby reluctantly followed her at a distance, leaving the children by the pool under the supervision of a familiar lifeguard whom she had already recognized. Sarah got into a taxi and headed towards the local entertainment center. Abby caught another car and followed. At the entertainment center, where bars and clubs were located, Sarah, getting out of a taxi, met a short man in a bright Hawaiian shirt. She immediately threw herself on his neck and kissed him. Abby froze nearby, feeling an unpleasant feeling arise inside her. The man hugged Sarah, they started talking animatedly about something, and then disappeared into one of the bars. Abby didn't follow. What she saw was enough for her. She herself did not understand what to do. Tell Mike right, she didn't want to get involved in someone else's family. But on the other hand, she had already promised to look after Olivia and wanted to be honest. Doubts tormented her all day. When Sarah returned to the hotel in the evening with the same man, they sat at a table in a bar on the territory of the complex, hugging and not embarrassed by the public. Abby caught a glimpse of them as she passed by from the poolside. She felt disgusted with Sarah. After all, the daughter is in the room, and the mother is flirting freely with some guy. Abby accidentally met Sarah's eyes. She just smiled arrogantly, took a sip of her cocktail, and turned away. She didn't seem to care that anyone she knew could see her. Abby decided that she should let Mike know what was going on here, but she didn't know the right way to do it. She understood that words without evidence could look like gossip, and Abby herself didn't want to look like a slanderer. However, the thought that Mike was living in ignorance haunted her. A couple more days passed, and Sarah spent more and more time with the stranger. One evening, Abby, returning from the beach with the children, saw a real scene at the pool. Sarah and that man kissed while standing by a sun lounger, while Sarah was in a swimsuit and her companion was in an open shirt and light shorts. It looked extremely frank and in no way resembled simple friendship. Abby felt her stomach clench with pity for Mike and anger at Sarah. I wanted to go up and slap Sarah in the face for such behavior, but she restrained herself for the sake of the children. Olivia had just jumped out of the pool and was about to approach her mother, but she saw that Sarah was busy in a passionate embrace. The girl stopped abruptly and froze with an expression of pain and confusion on her face. Abby quickly ran up to her and turned her around. "Liv, let's go get changed. I have some nice fruit and juice in the room." "But this is my mother," Olivia whispered. With him. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Abby carefully hugged Olivia, blocking her view. "Let's go. No need to look at it." Dylan also saw everything, but was still too young to understand the full depth of the situation. He asked Abby quietly, "Mom, are Aunt Sarah and that man, are they dating?" Abby responded evasively. "Grown-ups act like that sometimes, Dylan. But come on, it's none of your business." They took Olivia to their room, where the girl could not stand it and burst into tears. When the first rush of tears passed, she wiped her eyes. "I knew that my mother was dating someone, but I didn't think that she would do it openly, without being embarrassed by me." Abby felt helpless, but tried to be supportive. "Liv, I know it hurts, and I'm sorry you had to see it. But know one thing, your dad loves you very much, and what your mom does is her choice. It has nothing to do with you. It's not your fault." Olivia nodded, pursing her lips. It was clear that she was having a hard time. A minute later, she asked, "Will you tell Dad?" Abby sighed. "I'm afraid that he will take this as a betrayal or will be too upset. But Liv, he should know. Maybe I'll do it carefully." The girl, still sniffling, whispered, "Dad deserves the truth. He's good. I don't understand how his mother can do this to him." Abby stroked her hair. "Nobody understands this, Liv." The next morning, she made a decision. She took the phone and, seeing that Sarah had gone somewhere again, decided to take a photo as soon as the right moment presented itself. She needed irrefutable proof so Mike wouldn't think she was making it all up. At lunch, when she and the children were walking past the pool, she noticed that Sarah was hugging this man on a sun lounger and took several pictures from a decent distance. The photo clearly showed that it was Sarah and that there was a stranger nearby. After receiving the photo, Abby felt conflicting emotions. On the one hand, She did not want to interfere in someone else's marriage, but on the other, she understood that the truth must be revealed. That same day, in the evening, when the children had gone to bed and Sarah had disappeared somewhere on another date, Abby was sitting on the balcony of her room overlooking the dark sea. The moon illuminated the crests of the waves with a silvery path. Dylan fell asleep long ago, exhausted after a busy day. Abby was scrolling through the photos she took by the pool on her phone. In one of the pictures, Sarah and the man were kissing. There could be no doubt betrayal was obvious. Abby hesitated for a long moment before hitting the send button. But remembering Olivia's voice, "Daddy deserves the truth," she decisively wrote a short message to Mike. "You need to know what's going on. I'm sorry." Then I attached a photo and sent it. Her heart was pounding as if she was committing some serious act, but she understood that it was more honest than hiding. A few minutes later, a response came from Mike without words, just a simple accepted. Abby didn't know how he took the pictures, but she assumed it was a blow to him. She tried to calm down and went to check if Dylan was sleeping. The son sniffled, hugging a small pillow. Abby stroked his head and thought about how difficult it can be for the two of them. But at that moment she realized it is better to be alone than to live with someone like Sarah, who does not value family and husband. My thoughts were confused. She regretted that it was she who became the unwitting messenger who brought sad news. But it would be worse if Mike continued to live in deception. Mike read Abby's message late at night. He had just finished a complex operation and opened his phone to check the time. When I saw the notification, I instantly felt my stomach turn cold and my heart begin to beat faster. Opening the photo, he seemed to momentarily lose touch with reality. In the photo, Sarah and a man were hugging near the pool, smiling, kissing. It was a detriment to a man's pride and heartfelt affection. Even though it had weakened over the years, it still existed. He sat on a bench in an empty hallway, clutching his phone until his knuckles turned white. My thoughts were racing. Need to call Sarah, or she doesn't care. Proving that he meant anything is ridiculous. Cursing her, he already felt bitterness, anger, and a strange feeling of liberation after all. Now he had every reason to put an end to this ruined marriage. But despite this, pain pierced him. He thought about his daughter. Olivia had to see all this. What a hell Sarah had plunged them all into with her selfishness. He dialed Sarah's number, but she didn't answer. Then he called Olivia. The girl picked up the phone. Her voice was sleepy and confused. "Hello, Dad. What happened? Are you okay?" "Sorry, Liv, it's late. Were you asleep?" "Yes, it's late, but Did you find the photographs?" He realized that his daughter was aware. "Yes. Liv, listen, you don't have to tell me anything. Just tell me if you're okay, if you need help. Maybe I should buy a ticket and fly." "Dad, I don't know. I I just don't want to be here. Mom is with this man all day long. I hardly see her. But I don't want to interrupt my vacation for her sake. I feel good with Dylan and Abby. They support me. Maybe you can talk to your mom." Mike closed his eyes, feeling pain shoot through his chest. "Of course, I'll try. Liv, try not to worry. I'll figure it out, okay?" "Fine. Sorry it happened like this. Don't apologize. I love you. Sleep, my girl. Everything will be fine." They ended the call and Mike was left alone on an empty floor of the hospital. He spent several minutes in the corridor, trying to figure out what to do now. In a few hours, he will need to return to the patients again because he remained on night duty. He felt empty, angry, but had to control himself for the sake of work. In my soul, like a bolt from the blue, the phrase sounded, "This is the end of marriage." He couldn't imagine how Sarah would look him in the eye after all this. Maybe she's not even going to come back. And what will happen to Olivia? Of course, Mike will not give her his daughter. He, as a doctor, as a person, had seen too much human pain, but now the pain fell on him. I had to hold on, clench my teeth, go to the operating room, and help the patients. Such is the fate of a doctor to treat other people's wounds without having time to heal his own. He texted Abby, "Thanks for telling the truth. I talked to Liv. Take care of her until they get back. I'll handle this situation." After receiving her response of support and understanding, Mike felt that he was not alone. But he did not get rid of the oppressive feeling that his world had collapsed. That night, he carried out several operations on autopilot, relying on professionalism and years of practice. Medical duty helped him distract himself, but after each operation, when he went out into the corridor, he remembered these photos and felt a coldness in his chest. So he met the dawn on the verge of physical and emotional exhaustion. When morning came, Tom Keller appeared on the threshold of the staff room. Noticing Mike's haggard face, he frowned. "Harper, you need to rest. You don't look like yourself. The vital operations are over. Go home and sleep for a few hours." Mike shook his head. "There are still patients who need to be checked. Don't make things up. I'll order you to leave if necessary. You've been on duty all night. You look like a zombie." Unable to resist, Mike returned home. The empty apartment greeted him with silence. He threw his work bag in the hallway, walked to the bedroom, and collapsed on the bed. But the dream did not come. Photos with Sarah and her lover popped up before my eyes. Finally, tired of suffering, he fell into a heavy slumber, filled with nightmares and fragments of thoughts about the future, which now seemed completely different to him than before. The gray pre-dawn sky had barely had time to be illuminated by the first reflections of the sun, and Michael Harper was already sitting in his office in the city hospital. Last night, he performed several surgeries outside of his normal schedule. The duty was difficult both physically and emotionally. Photos of his wife's betrayal could not leave his head, and disturbing thoughts did not allow him to sleep for a minute. He leaned back in the hard doctor's chair, closing his eyes. I wanted to sleep unbearably. His soul burned with humiliation, resentment, and absent-minded anger that swirled within him. However, the May rays of the sun penetrating through the window spared no one. They permeated the room, revealing not only the dust on the table and bookshelf, but also the internal discord in Mike himself. A few minutes later, the office door opened slightly, and a nurse looked inside. She said that Tom Keller would like to speak with Mike in his office. Mike nodded dryly, reached for the white robe hanging on the back of the chair, and trudged there, still feeling heavy in his legs and foggy in his head. The office of Tom, the head of the department, was larger and more spacious. Diplomas, hospital awards, and photographs of the team hung on the walls. Tom himself sat at the wide table on a massive leather chair. His gaze was serious, but there was no condemnation in it. He motioned for Mike to sit in the chair opposite him. "Hello, Harper. You don't look too nice. Come in and settle down." Mike sat down, trying to maintain his usual confident posture, but he couldn't play indifference in front of Tom. "Hello, Tom. Anything urgent? I wanted to know what's going on in your life. You have taken on so much work this week that our young residents are already afraid that you will take over their schedule too. I see you almost live here." Mike sighed heavily. "It just turns out that way. Family circumstances. I prefer to be here than at home." Tom looked at the cup of coffee that was on his table, took a sip, and then said quietly, "I'm not a fan of poking my nose into other people's affairs. But I haven't known you for the first year. Previously, in any problem, you stood up straight, but now you look like a person who wants to scream. Maybe you can help me understand what's going on." Mike looked away, looking at the old stain on the floor that had not been removed after the recent renovation. Then, as if having made up his mind, he looked at Tom. "Yes, everything has gone to hell for me here. The wife is cheating. I learned about this from photos that a colleague sent me. Everything is obvious there. I don't know how to react yet, but apparently I'll have to file for divorce." Tom frowned. His gaze became heavier, but at the same time he showed sympathy. "I'm sorry, Mike. So where is she now?" "She went to Florida with her daughter and my colleague, who also took her son on vacation. But in the end, it turned out that the wife was not just relaxing, but was having an affair with some guy there. Frankly and brazenly. I understand that this is a shock for you. How are you holding up?" Mike swallowed a lump and tried to speak calmly. "I'm holding on as best I can. I'm endlessly angry, not so much because of himself, but because of Olivia. My daughter sees all this and suffers. and my wife doesn't seem to think about the consequences." Tom was silent for a while, tapping his fingers on the wooden top of the table. "It sounds disgusting, but what are you going to do? I'll probably get a divorce. I don't see any other way. Honestly, I'm already tired of our fictitious marriage. Previously, I endured it only for the sake of my daughter. But now I understand that it is too painful for Olivia to see how we quarrel and how my mother behaves irresponsibly." Tom got up from his chair and went to the window. Below, in the hospital courtyard, employees were busy loading boxes of medicines, and patients slowly moved from one building to another. Tom turned his head, looking at Mike with slight regret. "I'm not a lawyer, but as far as I know, if you have evidence of her betrayal, if there are people who saw all this, then you will have a fairly strong position in court. If you decide to fight for custody of your daughter, your chances are very good, considering that your wife does not work, and you are quite wealthy and respected in society." Mike nodded, confirming that he understood this. But in his soul, he was tormented by doubts, whether he would be a good single father. Medical duty, early rises, often night work. Will he be able to give Olivia enough attention? Yes, most likely this is what should be done. But you know, Tom, I have my doubts. I'm always at work. How do I organize my daughter's life? Don't forget that you can hire a nanny, you can use the services of a governess, you can ask your friends for help. And your colleague, Abby, may be able to help out if she has a similar situation. Mike looked thoughtfully at the manager. "Yes, about Abby. She is raising her son herself, she is also a doctor, but at the same time she looks like a strong woman. I'm not going to put responsibility for my daughter on her. However, she is already helping Olivia there in Florida, trying to distract her from Sarah's vile actions. I am grateful to her." Tom walked around the table and put his hand on Mike's shoulder. "Listen, friend, if you want to take a vacation to deal with all this, I will support you. But now we don't have the opportunity to let you go for a long time, as you understand. The hospital is busy, and the operating teams will work to the limit without you. But for a couple of weeks in the future, when things are critical, we will try to find a replacement." "Understood. Thank you, Tom." They hugged briefly, like a man, without further ado. Tom's eyes showed understanding and readiness to support Mike, because for many years he had seen him give his all at work and never bring personal problems to the clinic. Now it was his colleagues' turn to help him. "I hope everything works out for you. For now, take a couple of days without night operations. I'll talk to the assistants and let them back me up. And Harper, if you need to talk, my door is open." With these words, Mike left the office, feeling that at least he had support at work. He understood that a serious conversation with Sarah lay ahead, and perhaps a real family war. My daughter's face and those damned photographs surfaced in my memory. Anger, shame, pain merged into a lump, but he tried to hold on. He knew that he would act as his conscience and fatherly duty dictated. When he returned to his small office, his cell phone vibrated. Abby's name flashed on the screen. Again, there was a feeling that events were beginning to develop more rapidly. "Hello, Abby, what happened?" "Hello, Mike. Sorry to bother you. I'm still in Florida, remember, but I'm already thinking about going back early. I have news for you. Can you talk?" "Yes, you can tell everything." There was a quiet sigh on the line, and Abby spoke in a quick whisper. "I saw Sarah with that guy yesterday. They were sitting at a bar near the beach, quite openly. Sarah was drunk. Then they went to his room. I asked the waiter to make sure she came back at all. This is all too arrogant, especially with Olivia. The girl understands everything and cries. Today, she literally begged me not to leave her alone with her mother." Mike felt a chill run through his veins. "Understood. How is Olivia now?" "I took her to my place. Dylan and I tried to calm her down. But I admit, this is already going beyond all boundaries. I know you can't break away and fly in now, but I think you should talk to Sarah. Her behavior becomes unpredictable." Mike understood that a phone call would not solve the situation, but he decided to try. "I'll call Sarah back. If she picks up the phone, I'll try to arrange a serious conversation with her. If not, you may have to act through lawyers." Fine, I'm in touch. Olivia is going home in the next couple of days. She says she doesn't want to be here. Sarah doesn't seem to care much about all this. Abby's voice sounded bitter, as if she herself felt pain for someone else's family. Mike thanked her for her concern and hung up. Then I looked at the screen for another minute, feeling everything boiling inside. He couldn't understand how Sarah managed to get to what she was doing now so quickly and so radically. In his heart, he knew the answer to this question. She had lived too long in an atmosphere of her own desires, and he did not have enough time and desire to change the situation. And here is the result. But even guilt could not justify her outright betrayal and neglect of her daughter. He took a deep breath as he dialed Sarah's number, although he doubted she would answer. And indeed, the signal was sent, but there was no answer. She seemed to not care that there was a scandal going on at home, and that her husband would like at least some clarity. Meanwhile, the first rays of the sun gradually became bright. A new day in the hospital began with morning tests, rounds, and upcoming operations. Mike knew that the personal problems that had piled up would not relieve him of his work debt, and he stood up, straightened his shoulders, and went to the patients, deciding that he would move step by step. First to save lives, then he will deal with his own. At that moment, he clearly felt that the moment of serious decisions had already arrived. Sarah Harper's last few days in Florida have been a whirlwind of passion. Her new acquaintance, who introduced himself as Vic, turned out to be a resident of the same hotel who came to relax and have fun without family ties. They met on the first day, exchanged a few phrases at the bar, drank, and then attraction flared up between them, dictated more by a thirst for adventure than by real feelings. Sarah was in the grip of an unusual freedom. On the one hand, she was tired of her family life with Mike, who seemed so correct, predictable, and always busy at work. On the other hand, she wanted luxury, the desire to be idolized. With the sea sun, exciting evening entertainment, and cocktails at the beach clubs as a backdrop, Sarah felt liberated from the oppression of home. Vic skillfully complimented her, took her to nightclubs, and bought alcohol. The two of them spent time together as if nothing else existed in their lives. Realizing that her daughter almost did not appear before her eyes, Sarah seemed to sigh with relief. She saw that Abby, Mike's new colleague, was looking after Olivia. My daughter ran with a boy, Dylan, to the water park and sat in a cafe with these new friends. Sarah did not think about what such a mother's withdrawal meant for the girl. She attributed her behavior to the fact that she deserved rest and pleasure. One evening, as Sarah sat at a round table on the beach, cuddling with Vic, she caught a glimpse of Abby standing nearby with a phone camera. But she ignored it, deciding that she did not care about the opinion of some employee, even her husband's colleague. However, tension grew. My daughter tried to talk to Sarah several times, but she waved her off. Olivia finally lost her patience. One afternoon, she approached her mother as she was about to leave and said, "Mom, I need to talk to you seriously." Sarah put her purse down, looking at her daughter with displeasure. "What else don't you see? I have something to do." "I see. These are the matters I want to talk about. You spend time with this Vic, you constantly leave, and you leave me alone. It's good that there are Abby and Dylan, otherwise I would be sitting in the room or wandering around alone. I'm tired of you not caring about me." Sarah's eyes flashed angrily. "Don't you dare talk to me in that tone. I am an adult woman and can relax as I want. I've been at home for a whole year already. I've seen enough in the kitchen. I'm tired of boredom. If walking is so important to you, you could come with me. But you yourself prefer to mess with this Abby." Olivia bit her lip, trying to control her emotions. "Yes, because you never asked me to go together. I'm trying to reach out, but you just push me away. And that's not so bad. I'm disgusted by your behavior. I see that you are cheating on your dad." Sarah turned pale, and her eyes flashed with irritated anger. "It's none of your business. In general, shut up. Your father never paid any attention to me. He is bogged down in his work. I have the right to happiness." Olivia forced out a contemptuous laugh. "Happiness at the expense of a collapsing family. You know, Mom, I don't care. I can't see it anymore. I want to leave." Sarah narrowed her eyes. Where will you go? You are 12 years old. Dad said he would pick me up at any time if I asked, and I will ask. The daughter turned and ran away, leaving Sarah to seethe in impotent rage. In the depths of her soul, Sarah had an alarming thought. What kind of mother would she be if her daughter refused to be around? However, she quickly trampled this thought with routine and attacks against Mike, arguing in her mind that all the blame lay with him. Vic, by that time, had already realized that Sarah was in a very complicated family situation. However, he had little interest in subtleties. He did not mind any intimacy Sarah offered him and had no plans to marry her. He perceived it as a fleeting vacation. Sarah soon heard rumors that Abby seemed to be taking photos and sending them to Mike. The suspicion became so obvious that one evening Sarah found Abby in the hotel lobby and came close to her. Listen, have you decided to write complaints to my husband or something? Why do you need this? Abby looked at her calmly, trying not to raise her voice so as not to attract the attention of strangers. Sarah, I didn't mean to set anyone up, but I couldn't watch Olivia suffer. And yes, I think Mike should know the truth. Sarah was ready to flare up, but she remembered that there were people around. She hissed through her teeth. You will really regret getting into my family. Mike won't give you anything, only problems. And in general, I will not allow myself to be made guilty. You know, Sarah, I don't want to argue with you. I see what's happening to you. But as a doctor, as a mother, and as a person, I believe Olivia should not be a victim of any of this. Shut up. Don't interfere. Sarah turned and walked away, leaving behind an atmosphere of tension. Meanwhile, Abby watched Olivia's condition worsen. The girl alternated between crying and withdrawing into herself. She almost didn't call her father because she was afraid of upsetting him even more. But one evening she made up her mind, dialed Mike's number, and asked to pick her up as early as possible. Abby promised to help buy a ticket if needed. Then Mike himself decided that it would be right. He transferred the money to Abby's card so that she could buy the next flights home for herself and the children. Abby agreed without hesitation to return early, even if she lost a few days of paid vacation. Sarah did not stop her daughter when she announced that she was leaving. Some kind of regret may have stirred in Sarah's soul, but she did not express it out loud. She continued to spend time with Vic, turning a blind eye to all moral obligations. As a result, on the fifth day, 3 days before the official end of the reservation, Abby, along with Dylan and Olivia, packed up and flew back. Sarah stayed, apparently intending to prolong her romantic intoxication with her new boyfriend. She didn't think about what consequences this would entail. When Abby and the kids landed in their hometown, Olivia looked exhausted and relieved at the same time. Traces of worry were visible on the girl's tired face. On the plane, she hardly spoke, only occasionally mentioning how much she missed her father. At the airport, Mike was waiting for them at the exit of the arrivals area. He stood in casual clothes, a little disheveled, with dark circles under his eyes, but in his gaze there was a great desire to hug his daughter as quickly as possible. Next to him was Tom, who volunteered to help, since they were on a short consulting trip that day. Olivia ran out first. Seeing her father, she rushed to him and hugged him so tightly, as if she was afraid that he would disappear. Mike hugged her and felt the tension in his chest begin to subside. Dad, I really missed you. I hate all this that happened. Mom stayed there and didn't even say goodbye properly. Mike swallowed a lump, raised his daughter's head, looked into her eyes. Quiet, Liv. Are you home? I'm here. Everything will be fine. Now we'll figure it out. Abby followed with her son. They were dragging 2 large suitcases. Mike nodded to her, grateful. Thank you for coming back and not leaving Olivia. I know you had to leave early. I'll make up for everything. Abby shook her head. Money is not important here. I couldn't leave her there. She looked at Tom, exchanging short nods with him. Tom smiled slightly, trying to diffuse the situation. Dylan, looking at all this, approached his mother and asked quietly, Mom, when will we see Olivia now? Abby patted his head affectionately. We'll definitely see you. After all, we need to continue to be friends and at least go to the movies together. Olivia perked up a little when she heard this. Dylan, thank you for brightening up my vacation in Florida. You are one of the best friends I've ever had. Dylan smiled, but there was a childish timidity in his eyes. He waved his hand as if to say, no problem. Together they walked towards the parking lot. Mike determinedly carried Olivia's suitcase, while Tom helped with Abby and Dylan's travel bags. When everyone was loaded into the car, the four of them briefly discussed who was going where. Abby was planning on taking a taxi back to her apartment because Mike had a hospital appointment, but he offered to give them a ride right away. Listen, Abby, give me half an hour to drop by some place, then I'll take you. I don't want to leave you with your suitcases. Thank you, Mike. That would be very helpful. Everyone got into the car. Along the way, Olivia and Dylan talked quietly, discussing funny moments from the water park and the beach, trying not to touch on sad topics. Mike asked his daughter about the flight, food, and well-being. He seemed to care about every little detail as he felt guilty for sending them off without him. Finally, they made it to the hospital, where Mike had to sign some urgent papers. While he went inside, Tom remained in the car, carrying on a conversation with Abby. There was a fresh wind outside the parking windows, and clouds slowly floated in the sky. Mike is going through a difficult period, Tom said, twirling a bunch of keys in his hands. Thank you for being so supportive of him and Olivia. It's not difficult for me, Tom. He's a good person. I have long seen how much effort he puts into work and family. It's just Sarah she. Abby paused, shrugging. I only saw Sarah a couple of times, and then only in passing. I always thought she was a little spoiled, but who knows what was going on in their souls. It's not for me to judge, but what she did on vacation is beyond my comprehension. She wasn't even interested in her daughter. Tom sighed heavily, and at that moment Mike got into the car with a folder of documents. That's it, I'm done. Let's go, we'll get you there. Half an hour later, they dropped Abby and Dylan off at their house, a tall red brick building with a green lawn in front. Mike helped carry out the suitcases, for which Abby thanked him again. I'll be in touch. If Olivia needs communication or just a walk, we are always happy. Thank you, Abby. I'll definitely dial it. Dylan and Olivia said goodbye, agreeing that they would see each other more often at school and communicate on the phone. A shy smile lit up on the faces of both children. The car's back door slammed shut, and Mike drove forward again, trying to keep his eyes on the road. Tom dropped them off near Mike's house. There, at the entrance, there are 6 floors, a narrow corridor with shabby paint. Mike and Olivia silently walked up to their room, not fully realizing what they were doing. When the apartment door opened, they were greeted by a familiar silence. There was no one in the rooms because Sarah never returned. Mike nodded to his daughter to go into the living room and sit on the sofa. Olivia put her backpack in the hallway, then looked around. Dad, can I quickly take a shower, and then we can talk? Of course, honey. While his daughter was washing away the smell of the flight and a foreign city, Mike went into the kitchen and turned on the kettle. He felt that his strength was running out. So many emotions, so many experiences. But when Olivia came out of the bathroom in her home clothes, something warmed inside Mike. Have a seat, he said, pointing to a small table. I'll make some tea. Would you like some cookies? Olivia nodded. She took the mug, warming it in her palms. Mike sat across from him, trying to figure out how to start a conversation. Liv, I understand that this is all difficult for you. Tell me what you need. Do you want your mom and I to try to make peace? Or do you understand that the situation is most likely irreversible? She looked him straight in the eyes. Dad, I don't want to lie. I don't see the point in keeping a family where my mother doesn't respect you and doesn't love me the way she should. She destroyed everything herself. I just want you to not feel guilty. Mike felt a lump forming in his throat, but tried to speak firmly. Thank you for your frankness. I really think this is the end. We'll get a divorce. I want to take you to my place. I am not indifferent to how you live, and I am ready to do everything to make you comfortable. I will need time to resolve the issue with my work schedule. Olivia smiled slightly. I know it will be difficult, but I'm already used to being without my mother, to be honest. And with you, I feel calmer. Mike nodded, realizing that his daughter was more mature than he could have expected. Fine. Then we'll be alone for a while. Let's figure out how to organize everything. I won't force you to meet your mom if you don't want to. But she still has rights as a parent, although we'll see what the court decides. I understood. The daughter stood up and looked around the living room tiredly. Can I sleep a little in my room? I'm terribly exhausted. Of course, go and rest. Mike watched her go, noting how quickly she had matured in these few weeks. Her shoulders seemed to become a little wider, and there was a conscious seriousness in her eyes. When Olivia disappeared into her room, Mike was left again in the empty living room. He sat down, covered his face with his hands, and tears welled up in his eyes. How many times did he want to return to his past family life and tried to do something to make Sarah feel his care? But now everything had collapsed completely, and although it was painful, there was also something liberating in it. Sarah was still far away, perhaps not even aware that her daughter had already flown home, or she suspected it, but she didn't care. Ahead lay conversations with a lawyer, paperwork, and perhaps an outright conflict with Sarah. But Mike wasn't afraid. He was only afraid for his daughter's feelings. It's been almost a week since Olivia returned home. Sarah was still in Florida, periodically posting photos from the beach on social networks, in which she posed alone or with Vic. She didn't seem to care that her acquaintances and friends saw all this. During this time, Mike managed to hire a lawyer and receive preliminary consultations. My daughter went to school and tried not to advertise family problems, but close friends probably noticed that she had become quieter and more withdrawn. In the evenings, Olivia did her homework in the living room, sometimes texted with Dylan, and Mike cooked dinner, trying to learn the habits of a single father. Things got tense when Sarah suddenly announced that she was returning. She didn't call her husband in advance, but simply sent one message: "I'll be home tomorrow." In response, Mike succinctly wrote, "I'll wait, we need to talk." He did not elaborate, realizing that a serious confrontation was ahead. The next morning, the doorbell rang at the apartment. Mike opened it and saw Sarah in jeans and a fashionable top, with a fair tan on her face and bare arms. She entered the apartment uninvited, threw her bag on the floor, and glanced around the living room. "Hello, where's Olivia?" Mike crossed his arms over his chest. "At school. She wanted to go and said that she didn't want to sit at home on her first day after illness." Sarah furrowed her brows. "What are you carrying? What after your illness? Doesn't matter. You're surprised that your daughter is living her life because her mother abandoned her in Florida." Sarah pursed her lips for a moment, then sank down onto the sofa. "Don't be dramatic, Mike. I wanted to rest. I have the right." Mike came closer, trying to speak calmly, but his voice was filled with cold rage. "You weren't just resting. You cheated on me. You disgraced the family. You made your daughter suffer. I won't tolerate this anymore." Sarah waved it off. "To be honest, Mike, what kind of marriage did we have? None. You are always at work. There is no support from you. I'm tired of this. I don't intend to cry and repent if you understand what I'm getting at. Understand, so you don't see your guilt. What's my fault? That I was looking for warmth that I didn't receive at home. You yourself abandoned me. I didn't leave you, Sarah. I worked for the family. But apparently, what you need is not a family, but a wallet and empty entertainment." She looked at him angrily. "I've been wanting to say this for a long time. Probably, yes. I've endured it all my life, and now I've decided to bring down mountains of claims on me. Stop acting like a victim. I have already hired a lawyer and am filing for divorce." Silence hung in the air. Sarah looked at Mike for a few seconds, as if checking how serious he was. Finally, she licked her lips and answered sharply, "Great. I wanted to say this myself. You think I need a husband who doesn't know how to enjoy life. Live with your patience, and I will live the way I like." Mike just shook his head sadly. "Fine. Only Olivia will stay with me. You'll have to accept it. Sarah narrowed her eyes. Don't you dare. This is my daughter. I won't let you take her away. Then explain why she fled from Florida herself and didn't want to stay with you. Not a single call from you all week, not a single question about how she got there. You haven't fulfilled your responsibilities. Any court will recognize your irresponsibility. Sarah seethed with indignation. I can also hire a lawyer. Don't think you can get away with anything. Do what you want. I protect the interests of the child, and your position is clear. The conversation reached a dead end. Sarah stood up and walked around the room, glancing at the shelves, at the family photos where they had once smiled. Finally, she squeezed out. Well, if that's the case, I'm leaving. I'll take some of my things and stay in a hotel. I don't intend to listen to your moralizing. Mike spread his hands. As you wish. While she went up to her bedroom, she began to pack a suitcase with clothes. Mike went out into the corridor. After a while, Sarah came down with a bulky bag and looked at him contemptuously. Tell Olivia I'm coming to my senses. I don't want to meet her now. Let her calm down. You think it's that important to her. If you want to know, she's not eager to see you. Sarah remained silent and headed towards the door. Just before leaving, she turned around. Okay, Mike, let's see what the court says. The door slammed and a tense silence reigned in the apartment. Mike sank onto the sofa, trying to mentally restrain himself from an outburst of emotions. Everything happened even easier than he expected, but bitterness settled in my soul. He always hoped that Sarah, despite all her shortcomings, would at least retain respect for her daughter. It turned out not. Since then, he was essentially left alone with Olivia and prepared for a serious legal process. The lawyer Mike hired turned out to be an experienced family law specialist. It was a middle-aged woman named Marion. She worked in a well-known office and had a reputation as a person who knew how to achieve positive solutions for clients. In her small office with leather chairs and formal shelving, Mike sat opposite, clutching a folder of papers. Olivia waited for him in the hall, knowing that the conversations would be serious. So, Marion began, glancing over the materials, you have evidence of your wife's infidelity. You have photographs at your disposal, even witnesses. In addition, she actually abandoned her daughter during her vacation. The court will certainly take these points into account. Mike nodded. Yes, we have all this. I would like to file for divorce as quickly as possible so as not to delay the process, and officially state that I want sole custody of my daughter. It is possible, but not always quickly. If your wife objects or demands joint custody, the process will be delayed. However, in current conditions, if you prove that she is not able to responsibly raise a child, the court may side with you. Mike rubbed his temples, remembering how Sarah had threatened to hire a lawyer. She said that she would also contact lawyers. Marion smiled calmly. She has the right to this. But from what I can see, your position is stronger if you demonstrate that you can provide your daughter with a stable life, including a sufficient income and normal conditions. I have a good income. I am a surgeon. But the problem is that I often work overtime, and I'm afraid that this could be used against me. Don't think. The main thing is that you have a plan for how you will take care of your daughter and who can help you if you are on duty. Perhaps a nanny or relatives. If your spouse does not work, but only lives at your expense and leads a wild lifestyle, the court will take this into account. Mike listened to every word, and inside him the desire was seething to quickly resolve all the formalities. So let's start the process. Here are all the documents I collected, including income statements, property certificates, and so on. Great, Marion said, accepting the folder and looking through the contents. I will prepare a claim by tomorrow. You will need to sign. Then we will send him to court. Walking out of the lawyer's office, Mike felt both anxious and relieved. Downstairs, in the bright hall, Olivia was sitting on a sofa, fiddling with the strap of her backpack. Seeing her father, she stood up and came closer. It's okay, Dad. Yes, sort of. I'm preparing paperwork for the court. How are you? Olivia sighed. It's normal. Everything is fine in class. My friends are wondering what's going on, but I don't know what to say. Say that we have family problems, but everything will be solved. This is true. They went outside, where the sun's rays gently warmed the sidewalk. The car was parked nearby, and Mike invited his daughter to sit in the front seat. Let's go to the store and buy some groceries. You promised to choose what you want for dinner. Okay, Olivia agreed, grinning. Maybe we can make homemade pizza. Why not? A warm breeze touched their faces as Mike started the engine. He was glad that he could do such simple things with his daughter. He felt a little better. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Sarah actually consulted with her lawyer. She sincerely believed that Mike did not have the right to completely take Olivia away. Yes, she made mistakes, but she was still a mother. However, her lawyer, a man with a slightly sly expression on his face, feared that Sarah's financial dependence and the presence of irrefutable facts of infidelity could play against them. If you want to claim equal rights, he told Sarah, you need to demonstrate that you are ready to provide for a child, have a stable job, or at least some sources of income. Sarah narrowed her eyes. But I have savings. And what nonsense. I can receive alimony. Yes, but the court will also look at the moral aspect. You don't work, you had no real contribution to the family, and now you're accused of cheating. This is unlikely to work in your favor. Sarah folded her arms over her chest in irritation. Let's see. I still don't think Mike will be able to balance work and raising a child adequately. He only pretends to be a great surgeon, but he is not at home. This can be used if you have evidence that he did not pay enough attention to his daughter before. But the court will also hear the other side. Sarah remained silent, realizing that she had no trump card. Despite her resentment and anger towards Mike, she understood that his reputation as a doctor in the city was very high, and she had none. Her empty life, diluted with shopping trips, looked faded. Thus, both sides prepared for a legal battle. But Mike and Sarah did not suspect that events would take an unexpected turn when new details of their life together emerged at the court hearing. Unexpectedly, Abby became Mike's real support these days. After returning from vacation, she continued to work at the hospital and constantly crossed paths with him, either in the dining room or on rounds. If earlier their communication was rather formal, now something more began between them: respect, warmth, and mutual gratitude for saving Olivia. One day, as Mike was leaving the operating room after a complex emergency operation, he saw Abby sitting in the hallway, holding some medical records in her lap. Her face looked tired, and beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. Abby, are you okay? She looked up. Yes, just a baby with a severe infection. I'm very worried, and I'm still tired. Mike sat down next to him, realizing that he could use at least 5 minutes of rest. Can I help you with something? Abby shrugged a little. Not now. I am coping with my task. But thanks for the offer. I heard that you are going through a divorce process. How are you holding up? Honestly, it doesn't matter. I have already started the legal procedure. I want to get full custody of Olivia. Everything hurts inside, but outwardly I hold on for the sake of my daughter and work. Abby nodded, looking at him sympathetically. Dylan asks about Olivia and wants to see her. Maybe we can have a little get-together this weekend. For example, I'll take Dylan and we'll all go to the park or a cafe together. I think it's a good idea. Olivia benefits from being with friends to distract herself. Wonderful. Then we'll ride off. They were silent for a while. There was a sense of mutual comfort. Mike looked at Abby's tired, but still beautiful face and felt deep gratitude for her participation in the fate of his daughter. Over the next few days, they coordinated plans. On Saturday, Mike and Olivia and Abby and Dylan decided to meet at the city amusement park so the kids could have some fun. Olivia was wary at first. It was unusual for her to imagine that her father could spend time in friendly company with another woman. But when they arrived at the park and a cheerful Dylan ran up to them, Olivia quickly became distracted by the sea of entertainment. Carousels, cotton candy, a shooting gallery. And Mike and Abby walked nearby, watching the two children laugh and fool around, jumping on the green grass. Nearby, there were tents selling soft drinks and popcorn. The sun's rays fell softly on the lawn, and the smell of roasted nuts filled the air. "It's good that we got out," Mike remarked, looking at Abby from under his brows. "I haven't seen my daughter so joyful for a long time." Abby smiled. "We need to give children a childhood, otherwise they will grow up to be eternally preoccupied adults." Mike nodded. "Yes, even though our family is in discord now, I will do everything so that Olivia can live in peace." They stopped at an ice cream shop and bought themselves a cone. Meanwhile, the children were jumping on the trampoline, squealing with delight. "How do you, Abby, cope with loneliness?" She shrugged. "I'm used to it. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's okay. My son is growing up and requires a lot of attention. I love my job, but it is exhausting. They say that a single mother does not have much chance for a personal life. I give myself time because the boy is most important." Mike felt a familiar feeling stir in his soul. He, too, had once felt deprived of warm family relationships. "Understand, I have a similar situation, but I still don't fully understand what will happen next." They were silent for a while, returning their gaze to the children. They had already moved to the tent, where they were handing out prizes for hitting the target. Dylan and Olivia were trying to win a stuffed animal. "They'll win for sure," Mike said with a smile. "Give them a chance to taste victory," Abby supported him. Then they went back to the rides, and Mike watched happily as Olivia laughed along with Dylan. It was felt that this day gave them both a respite after difficult months. Abby looked tenderly at her son, and Mike admired how she competently balanced between caring for the child and her own emotions. At some point, as the children ran off to the next carousel, Mike and Abby sat on a bench by the pond. The water glistened in it, and toy boats slid across the surface and were launched by the kids. "Thank you for having the courage to tell me the truth about Sarah's infidelity," Mike said quietly. "I think not everyone would dare to intervene." Abby looked away to the water. "I wasn't sure whether it was worth it either. But I couldn't watch your daughter being simply ignored. It was beyond my strength." Mike extended his hand, squeezing Abby's hand lightly in gratitude. She didn't pull away, she just felt trust and understanding being reborn between them. But both realized that now was not the time for a new relationship. There were too many unresolved problems and feelings around. And so the day passed, in warmth, joy, with a slight glimpse of future happiness, which so far seemed distant. But this meeting helped both Mike and Olivia feel that there are people in life who are ready to share their pain and support them at the most difficult moment. The day of judgment has arrived. In the family courtroom, everything looked inconspicuous. Boring walls, long benches, a judge's pulpit. However, for Mike and Sarah, this was a key moment in their lives together, the point at which their fate and Olivia's future were decided. Sarah appeared in the courtroom in an elegant suit, taking with her the lawyer who looked tense, as if expecting a heated argument. Mike sat next to his lawyer, Marion, and a little behind, as moral support, Tom was present, who decided to come to the meeting because he had known Mike for a long time and was ready to confirm all the positive aspects of his personality. Seeing Sarah, Mike experienced a familiar bitterness, but no longer felt the same pain. Rather, there remained fatigue inside and a firm decision to move on. The judge, a stern woman of about 50, carefully studied the case. She looked around at those present, banged her gavel, and announced the start of the hearing. First, Marion took the floor, outlining the essence of the claim. She said that Mike, being a conscientious father and a wealthy man, wants to get a divorce from Sarah and obtain custody of Olivia. Marion emphasized that Sarah repeatedly showed irresponsible behavior, left her daughter alone, went on vacation, and started a public affair, which traumatized the child. She also mentioned photographs and eyewitness accounts. Then they listened to Sarah's side. Her lawyer tried to prove that Mike did not pay enough attention to the family, that Sarah felt lonely, which means she was looking for what was missing in the marriage. He also mentioned that Sarah is a mother, and that the girl, according to him, still needs the feminine care that only a mother can give. Sarah looked at Mike from under her brows from time to time, as if she wanted to read at least a drop of sympathy in his eyes. But Mike sat with his back straight, the personification of determination. Then the judge began asking questions and clarifying details. She asked about income and living conditions. Mike explained that he has a stable salary and is ready to pay for a nanny if necessary. He said that his schedule at the hospital could be adjusted, and for this he received support from the institution. Tom confirmed, "As the head of the department, I am ready to provide Mike with a more lenient schedule so that he can raise his daughter. Considering his experience and reputation, we will make concessions." The judge nodded, making notes. Sarah made her case, claiming that Mike was still absent from work and never treated her with warmth, which is why she was faced with a choice. She complained that Mike made her a housewife, but did not give her money for personal needs. However, Marion quickly refuted this by presenting statements of large expenses paid by Mike. The time has come to question the witness. First up was Abby, who agreed to speak to talk about her trip to Florida. At first, she was nervous, not wanting to set Sarah up, but she understood that the truth had to be voiced, because we were talking about the child's future. "I'm a pediatrician at a city hospital, and yes, I saw Sarah leaving us with the children almost every day, disappearing with some man, then appearing clearly drunk. Mike's daughter, Olivia, stayed with me and my son. I actually took care of her. I never saw Sarah spend one full day with Olivia. This hurt the child." The judge asked Sarah, "Do you have anything to object to?" Sarah looked away, frowning. "No. Let me just say that I was forced to relax because my husband couldn't go and I was tired of the routine. But as for the fact that the daughter was given to strangers, yes, that's what happened." The judge asked to explain once again why Sarah did not take care of her daughter's comfort. She began to get confused in her words, unable to find a clear answer. The judge then heard short statements from Mike, asking whether he wanted to impose any additional conditions. Mike said clearly, "I am asking for full custody because I believe that Sarah has repeatedly shown indifference to the child over the past year. We have evidence of indecent behavior that caused Olivia mental harm. If Sarah wants to see her daughter, I will not object, but I would like the court to establish clear rules." Sarah, hearing this, exploded. "How can you say that I am indifferent to my daughter? I love her. Yes, I needed rest. I had the right to my privacy." But her lawyer asked her to calm down with a pleading gesture, because such outbursts only spoiled the impression. After lengthy debates and studying papers, the judge retired to the deliberation room for a while. Everyone present froze in tension. Mike sat looking at the floor. Marion whispered something in his ear, encouraging him. Sarah nervously fiddled with her purse, and her lawyer artistically leafed through the papers. Half an hour later, the judge returned and announced the decision. The marriage of Michael Harper and Sarah Harper is dissolved. Olivia Harper becomes the guardianship of her father, Michael Harper, on the condition that he will provide appropriate conditions for the upbringing and living of his daughter. The mother retains the right to meet with the child by agreement of the parties and within the time frame established by the court, if the daughter so desires. This decision meant Mike wins. The court recognized his ability to support and raise Olivia, given his financial stability and willingness to change his schedule. Sarah turned pale. She tried to object, but the judge said firmly, "You can appeal, but in light of the facts presented, I see no reason to change the decision." Everyone stood up. The hall resounded with vague negotiations. Mike felt his wings growing. He won a painful but important victory. Now Olivia will be with him, and no one will be able to take his daughter away from him. Sarah turned away, cursing quietly, and left the hall. Mike watched her silhouette leaving with the feeling that they would no longer be together as husband and wife, and this was irreparable, but probably for the better. Tom came over, hugged Mike, and congratulated him. Marion smiled a victorious smile. But Mike didn't feel euphoric. He was a little sad because of the ruins in his personal life, and yet the relief outweighed it. Thus ended the long epic of time when they were a family. But life went on. After the court decision, Mike moved some of the things from the old apartment to another home, which he bought a year ago as an investment. He decided that it was symbolically right to start life with his daughter in a new place, without memories of the quarrels and resentments that permeated the old apartment. It was a small but cozy accommodation in a quiet area. Several rooms, a bright living room, and a spacious kitchen. Mike tried to make the renovation as modern and comfortable as possible so that Olivia felt comfortable. The move took place on one of the hot summer days. Boxes, furniture, bags, Mike carried it all on a rented truck. He was helped by a couple of familiar nurses, while Olivia was sitting on the stairs of the entrance, straightening the fallen strands of hair and watching how the men carried things. "Dad, I already want to put everything in its place," she said, standing up when she saw that the truck had been unloaded. Mike smiled and looked at her tenderly. "Be patient, we will finish everything soon. You can still choose how to arrange your furniture in the room." And indeed, when the workers brought everything in, Olivia began to excitedly display the bookshelves and hang posters of her favorite performers on the walls. Mike helped her screw in some shelves, move the bed, and put a colored rug on the floor. And when they finished, she looked around the room with satisfaction. "Dad, this is better than I thought. Thank you." Mike put his arm around her shoulders, feeling proud of his daughter. "Now this is your corner. I hope you find it comfortable." In the evening, they went to the nearest store, bought groceries and all sorts of small things. Kitchen towels, new dishes, a couple of floor lamps. When we returned, we sat down tiredly on the sofa in the living room, ate pizza, and laughed. For the first time in a long time, they felt light and free. The next day, Mike enrolled Olivia in a nearby school. Fortunately, it was summer outside, and school in the States was already approaching the holidays. She would start the new year in a different environment in the fall, and Mike was worried how his daughter would adapt to the new place. But Olivia argued that she has good communication skills and will quickly make friends, especially since many schools now use online interaction between students and she can get to know her classmates in advance. One evening during dinner, Olivia brought Sarah's social media to her father's attention. "There's a new photo there." It showed Sarah smiling with Vic somewhere on the beach, probably during another trip. "Look, Dad, Mom seems to have found her happiness." There was no sadness or resentment in her voice, just a statement of fact. Mike sighed, putting his fork down. "Let him live as he wants. This is no longer our concern." They looked at each other with understanding. Olivia only wanted her mother to think about her sometimes, but she knew that Sarah was unlikely to be eager to maintain a close connection right now. However, Sarah called a couple of times, asked how Olivia was settling in, promised to send money for school expenses, but did nothing concrete. She was more interested in parties and social gatherings, as if she had decided to make up for all the lost years. Mike wasn't going to get in her way. He's too tired of past dramas. Now he was starting a new life, where his daughter became the main priority, as well as a job that brought him not only financial well-being, but also a sense of fulfillment. Soon he agreed with Tom that he would take a more flexible schedule. Tom complied and relieved Mike of his night shifts, distributing them among other doctors. Mike started coming home early so he could prepare dinner and supervise Olivia's homework. Such a life was filled with routine, but it had its own pleasant stability. Sometimes neighbors came to them, brought treats, or Tom and his wife stopped by. And Abby and Dylan sometimes invited Olivia to the skating rink or to the movies. Mike saw his daughter feel happier when she spent time with friends. Several weeks passed, and one evening, while Mike was sitting in the kitchen at the computer, printing out some medical articles, the doorbell rang. He opened it and saw Abby on the threshold. "Hello. Sorry for the lack of warning. I just wanted to bring you the medical book I promised. Dylan is already asleep, and I thought you might be home." She handed him the hardcover book. Excitement flashed in her eyes. "Thank you, come in," Mike invited, opening the door. Abby walked into the hallway, taking in her new surroundings. Jackets were neatly hanged on a hanger, shoes were placed in their places, and a light aroma of baking could be felt. "Your place is very cozy." "I'm trying," Mike grinned. "Would you like some tea?" "Yes, it wouldn't hurt." They went into the kitchen, where there was a kettle on the stove. Mike took out the mugs and placed them on the table. Abby sat down on a chair, leaning on her palms. "How are you doing?" "Not bad. I'm already used to the role of a single father." Olivia also seems to have gotten used to her mom not being around, but she communicates with her periodically by phone. Although these conversations are more like a formality. Abby nodded, looking down. My Dylan also asks when we will meet again. He likes to play with Olivia. "This is amazing. We can arrange a walk together this weekend." "With pleasure." The tea began to boil. Mike poured boiling water into mugs and threw in tea bags. While the drink was steeping, they chatted about the hospital and what kind of patients they came across. Then the conversation smoothly turned to personal topics. "Tell me how you cope with your work and raising your son," Mike asked, looking into her eyes. "Well, like you. I come home, make dinner, and help with homework. Sometimes I invite a nanny when they urgently call me for a consultation on the weekend. It's hard, but what can you do?" They both understood that they each had their own difficulties, but they also noticed that it was pleasant for them to be around, to share their experiences and thoughts, because it is so rare for single parents to have someone who truly understands them. When the tea was finished, Abby stood up to leave. Mike followed her to the front door. She put on a light jacket and turned to him as if she wanted to say something, but remained silent. There was tension in the air. Mike gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "Thank you for coming. You can come whenever you want." Abby smiled slightly, softening. "I'm glad that everything is getting better for you. If you need help or just a conversation, I'm here." They froze for a moment, looking into each other's eyes. Each felt a spark running between them, but both realized that there was no point in rushing things. Too many wounds have not yet healed. Finally, Abby quietly said goodbye, walked out onto the landing, and went downstairs. Mike closed the door, feeling a strange emotion echo in his chest, a mixture of gratitude and sympathy for this woman who had helped him and his daughters so much. This is how his new life began without Sarah, but with the hope that something bright and real awaits him ahead. Several months have passed. Summer gave way to golden autumn, and the city gradually turned yellow and orange. For Mike and Olivia, it was a period of adaptation to a new home and a new school. The girl quickly found friends and joined a theater arts club, which helped her open up and forget about family troubles. Sometimes in the evenings, Mike and Olivia sat on the balcony overlooking the courtyard and talked about the past and the future. Olivia admitted that she still misses her mother, despite the insults, but understands that her mother chose her path. "Has she ever come here?" my daughter asked one day when they were looking at cars passing in the distance. "No, not yet," Mike answered. "She called a couple of times, but didn't want to talk for a long time. She says she has new plans with Vic." "I see," Olivia said quietly, hiding her gaze. "It's a pity that she's not interested in my life." Mike covered her hand with his hand. "I'm sorry too, but you have me, and there are people who care about you." Olivia smiled through her slight sadness. "I know, Dad. Thank you." Over time, Mike noticed that thoughts about Sarah visited him less and less. He managed to overcome pain and resentment because now concerns about his daughter came first, as well as internal changes in himself. He began to spend more time in parks and in the pool. Sometimes she and Olivia went out of town to a small country recreation area where they could rent a house for the weekend, have a barbecue, or take a walk in the forest. There, among tall pines and quiet lakes, Mike found long-awaited peace. He would wake up early in the morning and sit by the lake with a cup of coffee, thinking about how quickly his life had changed in a year. Sometimes Abby and Dylan went with them on these short trips. The children frolicked, played ball, and swam in the lake. The adults were preparing food and quietly talking about everything in the world. Mike felt himself drawn to Abby. He felt pleased at the thought that she had that tenderness and understanding that he so lacked in his marriage. One autumn day, when the leaves had already begun to fall and the local nature began to resemble an artist's palette, Mike made a spontaneous decision to go to a small mountain house that he had once rented with a friend in order to disconnect from the bustle of the city. He called Olivia and asked if she wanted to invite Abby and Dylan. "Of course I do," Olivia answered quickly. "The more of us, the merrier." The children became friends and enjoyed spending time together. Abby agreed, and the next day they set off in 2 cars into the Highlands, where the season of bright colors on the hillsides was beginning. The house stood at the foot of a low mountain surrounded by pine forest. It had several bedrooms, a large living room, and a fireplace. In the evening, when the sun was setting, they lit the fireplace and began to set the table with a hot dinner. Olivia and Dylan helped clear the table after cooking, and Mike and Abby laughed as they watched the kids argue about who was the dishwasher and who did the drying. Then everyone settled down in the living room. The warm glow of the fire reflected on the walls, creating a peaceful atmosphere. Mike moved closer to the fire and sat down on the carpet, crossing his legs. Olivia and Dylan chose the sofa. Abby took a chair, wrapped in a blanket. "Tell me a scary story," Dylan asked, smiling mischievously. "After all, we are in a house near the mountains. It's dark outside the window." Mike chuckled. "Are you afraid that you won't fall asleep?" "Oh, I'm not afraid. I'm a man." Olivia chuckled. "Let's do something mystical." Abby shook her head, grinning. "Better not. I might be scared of myself." But the children insisted, and Mike tried to remember a couple of legends. He told an old horror story about an abandoned hut where sounds were heard at night, although no one had lived inside for a long time. Dylan and Olivia listened with delight, excited by the atmosphere. When the story ended and the room became quiet, Mike looked at Abby and saw that she was watching him with a thoughtful look. The reflection of the flame was reflected in her eyes, and this made her expression seem especially soft. The children still ran between rooms to check if there were any ghosts in the house, and finally got tired. They were given a room on the second floor, where they lay down on 2 pull-out beds. Abby said good night to her son, and Mike said good night to his daughter. Soon the teenagers fell asleep, lulled by the crackling of wood in the fireplace. Mike and Abby went downstairs to turn off the lights and check that everything was okay. As soon as they were left alone, a pause hung in the air. They sat down on the sofa by the fireplace, next to each other. "It's so quiet," Abby whispered, glancing at the glowing coals. "Yes, this is a rare moment of peace," Mike agreed. "I'm so tired of the city bustle." She turned slightly towards him, and he noticed how her eyes reflected a mixed range of feelings: gratitude, sympathy, cautious intimacy. "Mike," she said, hesitantly touching the edge of his sleeve, "I wanted to tell you for a long time. I really appreciate our friendship, the fact that you are not afraid to share your experiences with me. After all your trials, you did not become bitter, but remained kind. This means a lot." He felt his heart beating faster. "I'm grateful to you, too. You helped me in difficult times," supported Olivia. "If it weren't for you, I might not have known the whole truth about Sarah." She nodded, lowering her eyes. "All these months I thought we could become something more than just friends. But I was afraid that it was too soon, that your wounds were still fresh." Mike felt a warm wave in his chest. It also seemed to him that mutual sympathy had long arisen between them. But he was afraid to rush into a new relationship after a difficult divorce. "I don't want to rush things," he said quietly, taking her hand. "But it seems to me that we can give each other happiness. And not just for the sake of the children, but because we need each other." Abby smiled, her lips trembling. "I agree. Let's move carefully, step by step." They sat close, almost touching shoulders. The smell of burning logs and night freshness permeated the room. Outside the windows, the wind rustled in the treetops. Mike gently pulled her close to him, and she didn't pull away. At that moment, all the pains experienced receded, as if they were far in the past. They sat for a long time, quietly talking about the future. They decided that there was no point in hiding anything from the children, because both Olivia and Dylan knew that their parents were mutually attracted. We discussed how to combine work, everyday life, and budding relationships. When the coals in the fireplace were almost extinguished and only the dying sparks illuminated the room, Abby complained that she was nodding off from fatigue. Mike stood up, took her hand, and led her to the stairs. "Let's go to bed, otherwise tomorrow morning the children will be in their ears, and we won't get enough sleep." She smiled in response, and they walked up the creaky steps, feeling that hope and the opportunity to love had returned to their lives. A year has passed since the events related to the divorce and legal disputes. Life in the city went on as usual. Mike strengthened his position at the hospital, performing complex surgeries and training young doctors. Tom, who remained in charge, never ceased to appreciate his professionalism and humanity. Olivia successfully moved to a new school, found friends there, and even joined the school drama club, where she received one of the roles in an amateur play. The girl shone with confidence and peace, because at home she had peace and mutual understanding with her father. Sarah sometimes appeared in Friends News on social networks, where she was seen in one resort place after another, always surrounded by men who adored her easygoing nature. She had almost no contact with her daughter, but she called once every couple of months and pretended to be interested in Olivia's affairs. The girl treated these calls calmly, without unnecessary emotions. Mike and Abby began to spend much more time together. They decided not to rush the marriage, but began dating, going on picnics and short trips together with the children. Their children also became friends, and the entire mini-family felt mutual affection growing. On a warm summer evening, when the street was pleasantly cool after the heat of the day, Mike held a festive meeting in his garden. There was a small lawn behind the house. He gathered close friends, Tom and his wife, several colleagues from the hospital, plus he invited Abby and Dylan. They set the table in the open air and decorated the bushes with garlands. The sun was slowly setting, turning the sky pink and orange. Olivia and Dylan were running around, lighting lamps. The silence was broken only by the cheerful hum of conversations. By evening, everyone sat down on chairs and took out glasses of soft drinks and wine. Mike, a little embarrassed, rose from his seat, asking for attention. "Friends, I want to say a few words. First of all, thanks for coming. Last year was the most difficult, but also the most instructive of my life. I realize that you cannot sacrifice yourself for a person who does not reciprocate your feelings. But when there are those nearby who sincerely support, it is priceless." He glanced at Olivia, who smiled, raising her glass of lemonade. Mike then turned his gaze to Abby, who sat across from him, listening to his words in surprise and awe. "Secondly, I am grateful to my daughter. She taught me that family is not just ties of blood, but also trust, shared joys, and moments that we experience together. I promise that I will always be there for you whenever you need." Olivia nodded, feeling tenderness welling up inside her. "And one last thing," Mike continued, squeezing Abby's hand. "I would like to thank you, Abby, for sharing a piece of your heart with me. I don't know what will happen next, but I know that I want to move forward with you, sharing our life and joys." Abby blushed, smiled, and stood up too. "Mike, thank you. I also really value what we have. Dylan and I are happy that we don't feel alone in this world." Light applause and cheerful exclamations escaped from the lips of those present. Tom, squinting slyly, raised his glass. "I propose a toast to a new life and to the fact that good people find each other." Everyone drank, and the children clapped their hands, demanding that the fun continue. Treats arrived: barbecue, salads, snacks. The evening was filled with laughter and warm communication. While it was getting dark, the garlands and lanterns glowed brighter, illuminating the smiles and faces of those gathered. Olivia and Dylan's eyes sparkled with joy because they felt almost like part of the same family. Mike and Abby sat next to each other, holding hands. They did not talk out loud about a future marriage, but inside they understood that anything is possible when there is love and mutual respect. The long hours of the holiday flew by unnoticed. When the stars lit up in the sky, many went home. Tom and his wife wished everyone happiness as they left by taxi. Colleagues said goodbye and bowed. Only Mike, Abby, and the children remained, who decided to spend the night in this house. They went out onto the porch to look at the quiet night courtyard. The sounds of the distant highway were muffled, and a light wind rustled in the tree branches. The Milky Way appeared in the sky. "You know," Mike said quietly, putting his arm around Abby's shoulders, "I would never have thought a year ago that I would be so happy." She pressed herself close to him, answering, "Life is amazing, and sometimes we need to go through pain to find true happiness." Olivia and Dylan stood side by side, shifting modestly. Olivia sighed and said, "What beauty is all around. I like our new life." Dylan supported her. "And me. When we are all together, it seems to me that everything will be fine." So, under the light of the night stars, the two of them, father and daughter, mother and son, felt that a new family had been born, although not welded together by official documents, but united by the warmth of the heart. Looking back, Mike knew it wasn't an easy road. Sarah betrayed, the marriage broke up, but a different future opened up for him and Olivia, full of real feelings, support, and love. The last sparks of old grievances dissipated in the rays of new hope. And on this note, in the embrace of ringing silence, they let the long-awaited feeling of life into their hearts, realizing that a real family can be different, but is always based on mutual respect, responsibility, and love. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.